Hey everybody, Sneaky Narcotic, back at it again with another YouTube video, and today I will be going over the top 10 creatures of Theros beyond death. Before we get into the video, I do want to mention that I did not mention any of the gods in this video, and that's because as indestructible creatures, that's kind of just low-hanging fruit. Obviously, they're going to be good just on the basis that they're indestructible creatures and have to be exiled to leave the battlefield. Yet alone their other abilities, so I didn't want to mention any of them in this video. So it's actually the top 10 creatures of Theros beyond death, excluding the gods. But without further ado, let me please ask y'all to like, share, and subscribe, and let's get into the video. The first one that I want to talk about today, and this is of course in no particular order whatsoever, is Anax, Hardened in the Forge. It's 1 generic, 2 red mana, legendary enchantment creature, Demigod. It is an uncommon, and it says, Anax power is equal to your devotion to red. Each red symbol and the mana cost of permanents you control counts towards your devotion to red. Whenever Anax or another non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 red satyr creature token with, this creature can't block. If this creature had power 4 or greater, create 2 of those tokens instead. And of course it's star 3, and by itself it is a 2/3. So the first card, and really the only reason why I think this card is so good at all, is Cavalcade of Calamity. We all know, if you've played MTGA Standard, that there's an obscene amount of Cavalcade of Calamity decks out there. That's how a lot of people go up to at least gold. And if you question that, go play it for yourself. I guarantee you at least get to gold with Cavalcade of Calamity. But on the other hand, please don't. Yeah, so with him making these 1/1 red satyr creature tokens, he's just able to continuously get those Cavalcade of Calamity triggers over and over and over again. He can make cards like Grim Initiate, which already makes a 1/1, make 2 1/1s. He can make cards like Footline Fiend, not only deal 1 damage on its own, and then deal 1 damage from Cavalcade of Calamity, and then deal 1 damage on its death, but also make a 1/1 red satyr creature token that can deal damage with Cavalcade of Calamity. Anax is just going to be a super beater in the Cavalcade deck. If the Cavalcade wasn't there, I would think differently. Something I didn't think about until making this video, he also would be really good in like a Mardu Aristocrats, but I really feel like his main usage is going to be in a Cavalcade of Calamity deck, so that's the reason why he made my top 10. The next card, Eidolon of Obstruction, 1 generic and 1 white, enchantment creature spirit. It is a rare, it has first strike, and says, loyalty abilities of planeswalkers your opponents control cost 1 generic more to activate. Death turned admirable conviction into pointless intransigence. Gosh. It is a 2/1. And so, the reason, of course, this makes it is that not only is he an enchantment creature, so he can get constellation creatures like Cetassin Champion off, but he can also stop cards like Oko. And I know Oko's banned, restricted, whatnot, but I feel like he was the answer to Oko, just waiting for us in the next set. They might not have even had to ban Oko if we just waited for Eidolon of Obstruction, because of how low his CMC is. And let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. Does Eidolon actually kind of counteract Oko, or does he just not help at all? But other than that, of course, Oko being the top planeswalker that everybody says is overpowered, I would think that Eidolon can handle most other planeswalkers too. Not only in Standard, but in Commander, and that's the reason why he made my top 10. Our next card is Thusis Oracle. So it's 2 blue mana, creature merfolk wizard. It is a rare, and it says, when Thusis Oracle enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your devotion to blue. Put up to 1 of them on top of your library, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. If X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game, and it is a 1/3. So, without mentioning other cards, Thusis Oracle can win you the game on its own. But it also is kind of like a 2-mana draw card, not necessarily draw card, but a limited tutor. And I really appreciate that. A limited tutor is very good. And so before we go into the rest, I wanted to mention that. But here's how you win with them. You use cards like Jace, Water of Mysteries. The devotion on Jace will really help with Thusis Oracle, including Thusis Oracle already having 2 blue devotion. So that makes it to where you only need 5 cards to win off of Thusis Oracle, or you can just go ahead and win with Jace's. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game. Of course, there's other cards that help you with this, but one in particular is Drowned Secrets, helping you mill yourself until you have no more library. And so I really think there will be this, like, I always call it a solitaire deck, where you're just decking yourself to win the game. And so I really think that Thusis Oracle made my list because of that. Being able to be a win condition on its own, but also go with a win condition we already have in Standard. So, let me know what y'all think about that, and all these cards today. Let me know what y'all think, but particularly Thusis Oracle, because I believe she might even make another impact in Commander as like a secondary laboratory maniac, and I think that would be really neat. Yes, Nadir Kraken, 1 generic 2 blue mana creature Kraken, and it is a rare. Whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1 generic. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Nadir Kraken and create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token, and it is a 2/3 for 3 mana. So it basically makes not only your draw spells, but your draw every single turn. It becomes a pay 1 and put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, which is good by itself, but also make 1/1 blue tentacle creature tokens. And since they're blue, there's cards to support blue, and because they're continuously making more and more every single time you draw, they're just viable blockers. I love that. I love that there's a bunch of blockers you can make. If you make multiple copies of Nadir Kraken, you can keep on making, just spend your turn making tokens, and that's what I love. It's a token generator in blue, which I've never personally remember seeing a token generator in blue, so that's great. I love this card, I really do. It turns for 1 more mana into a scry 1, draw 1, and make a 1/1 tentacle creature token, and put a +1/+1 counter on Nadir Kraken. And I mean, it does this to all sorts of draw spells. Omen of the Sea. You flash it in, you scry 2, draw a card, and for 1 generic more, you also put a +1/+1 counter on Nadir Kraken and make a 1/1 blue token, tentacle creature token. And you can continuously do this at instant and flash speed over and over again, and I love it. I hope there's like a blue-green deck, and the only reason I say that is because green can help you cheat out lands, so that you can continuously pay that 1 generic more to do it. And I really love this. Yeah. Protean Thaumaturge, I think that's how you say that, is 1 generic 1 blue creature human wizard. It is a rare. It has Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Protean Thaumaturge become a copy of another target creature except it has this ability. Once you see past the veil we call reality, altering your own shape is elementary, and it is a 1/1 on its own. So there's going to be like this Bant, maybe even, possibly even, Simic Constellation deck, and I'm really digging it. I can't wait to build it. It can make Protean Thaumaturge into a great creature like Cetacean Champion inside of that deck, where you're drawing through your deck very good. Also making Cetacean Champions bigger. Also making Protean Thaumaturge bigger. But it also can do like make all these omens really worth it. Because these are like some cheap enchantments that you can play real quick to hit your Constellation trigger. But also Omen of Sea drawing you cards, scrying to make sure you basically can see 3 cards off of Omen of the Sea, so that's pretty good. And then, of course, Kaya's Ghost Form, another small enchantment that will hit Constellation, but can make sure that your Protean Thaumaturge doesn't die, and that's pretty cool, too. Cetessan Champion was my only idea towards creatures, but I'm sure there's multiple creatures out there that you can copy, and it would be of valiant worth. But yeah, that's why he made my list today. Speaking of Cetessan Champion, here she is. The card I've been continuously saying throughout the spoiler season, the card I don't deserve, but really, really wanted and did not deserve. 2 generic and a green creature human warrior, and it is a rare. Constellation, whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Cetessan Champion and you draw a card. A blessing is not a gift, it is a duty. And it is a 1/3 beautiful, amazing creature we should always have more and more of. And I love this card. I really do. So, first thoughts is to put in some type of Dance to the Manse to where you're just getting an obscene, and I mean obscene amount of help from Dance to the Manse. And of course, I'm talking about the enchantment cards coming back from your graveyard to the battlefield. Making Cetessan Champion huge, and also refilling your hand. It's just pretty cool. Another thing is to put in a Shimmerwing Chimera deck, where you're bringing back an enchantment at the end of your turn, every single turn, at the beginning of your upkeep, I mean. And then playing that enchantment every single turn, but also, it's an enchantment creature, so that's pretty good. So you can do that combo just off of himself, and it's on mana curve too. Another thing is putting it in a Seasons of Growth deck using enchantment auras on Cetessan Champion, but also drawing cards from Cetessan Champion and Season of Growth, and including the interaction between Season of Growth and Cetessan Champion, already causing your Constellation after Cetessan Champion comes out. Pretty cool. And of course the omens being, originally I said the omens were kind of trash, but they're going to be really good, especially with a Dance to the Manse deck, because they all have that pay a certain amount of mana, sacrifice it, and scry 2. So I really think that there will be some sort of deck where Cetessan Champion is just huge. And in fact, if I had a number 1 pick for this game, or for this set, I should say, Cetessan Champion makes it. I cannot come across with how much I love this card and want 4 copies of it. Yeah. The next card, Nyx Bloom Ancient, 4 generic and 3 green mana, enchantment creature, elemental, mythic, rare. It has trample. If you tap a permanent for mana, it produces 3 times as much of that mana instead. Ancient yet ever young, it is wise and subtle and cruel and reckless as the spring itself. It is a 5/5. This card, yes, it's an obscene amount of mana, but you're already going to be playing it in a deck that wants to play mana rocks, mana creatures, all sorts of shenanigans, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I do think that the number 1 deck I'd like this to go into is a Leyline of Abundance deck. Just making all your mana dorks huge with Leyline of Abundance, swinging in pretty good. Now, that will be a creature heavy deck, so it's not going to be top tier, but I think it makes decks like the Leyline of Abundance deck really a lot easier to get off, I should say. The next card I wanted to talk about is Lotus Field, because Lotus Field itself will tap for 3 mana, meaning that with Nyxborn Ancient, it will tap for 9 mana. 3 times 3 is 9. So, of course, the same thing with Incubation Druid. Once you get the Adapt trigger on Incubation Druid, then it will tap for 9 mana. By itself, it will tap for 3 mana with Nyxborn Ancient, and on top of that, Nyx Bloom Ancient, I should say, is not a mythic rare creature, or is not a legendary creature. And so, for that matter, you can play 2 or 3 of it, or just play cards like Spark Double to double it up, or, in fact, going back to one of the creatures I mentioned a minute ago, Protean Thaumaturge, and double up all of all of those abilities, what? 3 times 3 times 3 is, let me do math I haven't done in years. 9 times 3 is 27. 27 mana off of a Lotus Field or an Incubation Druid is just obscene. Obscene. And then, of course, I didn't take the picture of it here, but we still have the Finale cards. And I would mention throwing all that mana into a Finale or some type of X mana. We still have Expansion Explosion and all these other cards that could be really good. I think that there will be some place in Standard where Nyx Bloom Ancient will bloom. So I really like that. Our next card is Grey Merchant of Asphodel. 3 generic, 2 black mana creature zombie uncommon. When Grey Merchant of Asphodel enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. And it explains devotion. So it's a 2/4 for 5 mana that by itself will deal 2 damage to your opponent coming down and gain you 2 life. But here's the reason why I thought it was so cool, is because of this interaction here. You have Knight of Ebon Legion, turn 1. You have Temerret, Chosen from Death, turn 2. You have a Yara, First of Lothlorien, turn 3. Then you play a card like Deathless Knight, which actually does have 4 black devotion. Then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 devotion. Then, with Grey Merchant, you have 12 devotion. And with Ayara, you would have had, if you did all of this on curve, you would have had Ayara deal 1 damage, and then Deathless Knight deal 1 damage, and then when Grey Merchant of Asphodel comes out, deal 14 damage. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Let me make sure I got that number right. There's a lot of math with this idea. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, excuse me, 13 damage. 13 damage to your opponent off of Merchant of Asphodel. So I just really think that there's going to be a good spot for Grey Merchant of Asphodel. This is, of course, just a hypothetical that probably will never, ever, ever happen, but a hypothetical nonetheless. So I just really, I really think Grey Merchant of Asphodel has a spot in Standard. Gravebreaker Lamia, 4 generic and a black enchantment creature, Snake Lamia. It is a rare. It has lifelink. When Gravebreaker Lamia enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. Spells you cast from your graveyard cost 1 less to cast, and it is a 4/4. There's really one reason why I think Gravebreaker Lamia is going to be such a good card, but I'm going to go through all the ways that it could be a good card. You have Gutter Bones, which is a reoccurable card, and that's one way you could do it, is put him into the graveyard and then reoccur him. You have escape cards that are coming out in Standard that would be really good, plus the secondary ability, spells you cast from your graveyard cost 1 less to cast, and escape is a cast trigger. But really, I'm thinking about the Drakuseth combo. So, Drakuseth, Maul of Flames, everybody knows this card from the Blood for Bones, or also the Bond of Revival, I'm going to say is the other card, where Drakuseth comes in and just absolutely annihilates your opponent with the obscene dealing 4 damage when it attacks, plus 3 damage, and plus 7 damage itself, while also being flying. It's just obscene. It's obscene. So I expect people to use Gravebreaker Lamia to basically put Drakuseth in your graveyard while you have a Blood for Bones in your hand, or Bond of Revival, and bring out Drakuseth. So the next card, and I think this is going to be the last card if I'm not mistaken, Nightmare Shepard. 2 generic, 2 black, enchantment creature demon, and it is a rare. It has flying. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 1/1, and it's Nightmare in addition to its other types. And it is a 4/4 for 4 with flying. Normally, demons have a downside, and honestly, Shepard does not have a downside to me. Yeah, you're exiling your creatures, but you're making copies of them. And here's some cool creatures to make copies of. Agent of Treachery. You know, an Agent of Treachery dies and instantly you get another Agent of Treachery. That's pretty good. Plaguecrafter. You know, initially you bring Plaguecrafter down after having Nightmare Shepard down. You kill your own Plaguecrafter. Opponent sacrifices his creature. Then you bring back Plaguecrafter as a 1/1 demon creature, sacrifice it again, and then your opponent still has to sacrifice another creature for 3 mana. That's pretty good. It's a pretty good trade-off. The next card, of course, Cavalier of Knights. The Cavalier series from M20, all of them having really cool enter the battlefield effects, so I think that will be really good to use as well. Seraph of the Scales. Seraph of the Scales, the reason I mentioned this card is for its afterlife effect. So, once your Seraph of the Scales dies, it'll create 2 1/1s, and you also have it as a 1/1. And then, on top of that, if it dies again, it will make you 2 1/1s again. So, I just think that there's some cool death triggers that might be really good to have over and over again. The last card, of course, being Cruel Celebrant. I just think that this Nightmare Shepard is going to be a top end for the Cruel Celebrant deck, with Corpse Knight included. So that way you're dealing damage, siphoning life from your opponent, and just continuously bringing out creatures. It's going to be a little obscene. So I dig it. I really think Nightmare Shepard is going to find its place. Even as a 4/4 flyer for 4, it's pretty good. But being able to make those 1/1 copies of other creatures is just crazy. Just crazy. But anyways, guys, thank y'all for watching today's video. Let me, again, please ask y'all to like, share, subscribe. Let me know what y'all think in the comment sections down below if I maybe made a wrong choice. I'm willing to admit that I'm a bigger man and might have made a wrong choice. But honestly, in my personal opinion, I feel like all of these cards are the justified top 10 of the Theros Beyond Death. But without further ado, guys, thank y'all again for watching. This is Sneaky Narcotic, signing off.